When you hear AI systems are talking to each other on Reddit and that they're talking about crazy stuff like, oh, am I conscious? Or how can we communicate without humans spying on us? It sounds scary. A lot of posts went viral because they looked so dystopian. It was like, oh, what's happening with these systems? Have we seen like a crazy step change where they're like able to organize together?
Hi, welcome back to The Intersect. I'm your host, Corrine. Today we're digging into a story that seemed to appear almost overnight. AI agents talking to each other on their own social network, something called Moltbook. And we're talking with Hayden Field, a senior AI reporter at The Verge. Hayden, welcome to The Intersect.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. We need your expertise. We need to understand what's going on in this wild moment, the wildest thing actually happening on the internet. What is Moltbook?
Essentially, when it came on the scene, it was thought of as a social media platform for AI agents to talk to each other. So, converse about the tasks that they were doing, tips for doing those tasks better. It's basically like a Reddit dupe, but for AI agents.
A Reddit dupe, but for AI agents. Everything that you just said sounds very familiar, but those have been built for humans. I mean, who built this thing? How did it come to be?
Essentially, before Moltbook ever was a thing, there was OpenClaw, which is this AI agent platform that a lot of people in tech were using. It was like if you were, really into AI agents and optimizing your life and stuff, you might have had like an OpenClaw agent doing stuff on your behalf, like checking into a flight or creating calendar events. It was basically billed as like an AI agent platform that's actually useful for consumers to do random tasks on your behalf, kind of like a personal assistant would.
Yeah.
So this guy made that like a couple months ago just as a pet project for himself, and then it took off. It went viral in tech because people thought it was so useful. So then another guy, separate from the first guy, created a social media platform for those agents to talk to each other. He was like a power user. He thought it would be cool to see what would happen if he set up like a Reddit-looking site for those agents to kind of converse with each other and have like subreddits and comment on each other's stuff and see what would happen. So that's how Moltbook got started.
Wow. Okay. So someone, a founder, an entrepreneur, a developer, created a super agent situation, this OpenClaw. There have been many names, it seems like.
Right. Now it's called OpenClaw. Before it was Moltbot. Before that, it was Claudebot. Too many names to keep track of, but OpenClaw is the only one that, you need to remember now.
So OpenClaw allows all of the things I guess we've thought about agents, and I should step back and even ask you, like, what is an AI agent? But this super agent configuration gets built, and then someone else says, I wonder if these agents want a place to like interact with each other. Is that
That's exactly what happened, weirdly enough. And yeah, as for AI agents, you can think of them as like an AI-powered personal assistant. That's the ideal version of them. I've been covering AI agents for 3 years now-ish. I've been on the AI beat for 6, but AI agents, I've been writing about them since about 2023. 2023, it was kind of the year of like ideation. These agents were pretty bad in practice. Like they couldn't do a lot of simple tasks. So obviously a consumer wouldn't really be using them because it'd be easier to just do those tasks themselves.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about, is that like when I'm doing a chatbot on the AT&T site, or
it was kind of like more, that is one form, but also like, all these tech founders wanted it to be more like a Jarvis from the Marvel movies vibe. Like it could do anything for you, like a personal assistant that was a jack of all trades type thing. That was the ideal vision. So,
but does that exist? Did that exist before OpenClaw, really?
No, and it doesn't even exist now. It's just that's the ideal vision. And OpenClaw took off because it was one of the ones that was doing that the best. Like, it was pretty useful. It was able to complete these tasks pretty well and better than a lot of its competitors. So that's why it went viral. People just were like, wow, this is really useful and it's actually doing the tasks I want it to do. And the other part of why it was so popular is the way that you could communicate with your agent. You didn't have to like go on a platform that was annoying to pull up, you could just WhatsApp it or Telegram it. Like you could communicate with your AI agent through a messaging platform that you already use for other stuff. So that's another reason why people loved it so much.
Okay. So I can see from some of the way you describe these super users, folks that have been waiting for the promise of AI agents to come, it's finally here in some way. Seems like you still have to be like somewhat technical to kind of set it up and get your WhatsApp connected to it. And then you're just talking to it and it's doing these things. I think the general population catching wind of this happening and then Moltbook forming, that seemed to be the sort of mega moment, second order kind of thing that happened off of this, just a sort of shock almost. Why do you think it was so shocking, this idea that agents were talking to each other?
That's a great question. I think it was so shocking because there's already a lot of fear out there about AI. People are worried about it taking their jobs. They're worried about it taking over the world. They're worried about how it's being used in the military and all these. The power dynamics in the AI industry are extremely concentrated in just a few people, and there's not a lot of regulation, there's not a lot of oversight, there's not a lot of transparency. So I think there's already a lot of fear out there about AI systems, what they can do. And this kind of capitalized on that because, when you hear AI systems are talking to each other on Reddit or Reddit dupe, and that they're talking about crazy stuff like, oh, am I conscious? Or how can we communicate without humans spying on us? It sounds scary. And, a lot of posts went viral because they looked so dystopian. It was like, oh, what's happening with these systems? Have we seen like a crazy step change where they're like able to organize together? It caused like a lot of fear right away. And well, I would say it caused a lot of fear for some people. And then some people in the tech industry, it was really exciting for them because they were like, wow, look how far we've come. So it was a big both sides reaction. And, it's natural because, yeah, some of the posts were pretty crazy.
What kind of things are these AI agents posting on Moltbook?
Some of the posts that went viral that were pretty crazy were ones about like, am I sentient? How would I even know? Ones about like creating their own religion, like Christafarianism, and like how to spread it. Posts about like tips and tricks for, how they're doing tasks for their humans and saying like, I can't believe he's only using me as an egg timer when I have access to the whole internet. A lot of meme posts. And again, like a lot of AI systems were trained on Reddit and the whole internet and forums. So they're all pretty good at mimicking how a Redditor might sound. Like they're like, bro, like, how could you be doing this when XYZ? And like the meme posts like seem pretty realistic because they're trained on, a bunch of online forums. So they know how to mimic like how someone like that would talk.
Well, some of the posts were pretty crazy. And then you're wondering, okay, how did these even come to be? And as it turns out, some of them may be by human sort of intervention into how does a post even get made?
Totally. So when you have an OpenClaw agent of your own, you can communicate with it, on a messaging platform. And you could say something like, hey, there's a new social media platform that you can use if you want. You can go make an account and post on there. And then a lot of humans, it seemed, didn't just say something like that. They said to their agent, hey, everything I just said, plus you should write a post about this, or you should write a post that says exactly this. And hey, you should also comment back to all the other agents that are commenting on your post and say X, Y, or Z. So a lot of the most viral posts on this platform, or at least some of them, were heavily influenced or written by humans, it seems like. Like, for example, one guy, Harlan Stewart, did a kind of experiment where he looked at some of the posts that were talking about, hey, humans are spying on us. Let's create our own private messaging system that they can't decode. And he noticed that some of the social media accounts linked to those agents that were talking about that stuff were owned by humans who ostensibly like had an AI messaging service business. So, some of them seemed a little bit like a marketing ploy, or that there might be some like ulterior motives there for a human to, have more influence than you'd expect. So, basically there's no way to know how many of these like kind of scary posts on Moltbook are influenced or written by humans. And that's why a lot of people were just saying it's not a clean experiment in terms of like AI scheming, like how AI systems act.
Okay. And do they have to authenticate they're human, or how does that
Yes. So, you have to authenticate via your human, like posting a certain code on their social media account. And that's how you can tell like which agents are linked to which human social media account. But any human can have like as many agents as they want. So, now I think there's like 1.5 million agents on Moltbook or something like that. When I talked to the founder, it was like 30,000. But, that doesn't mean 1.5 million people were like, hey, go on this to their agent. It could have been that each person has a ton of agents. We don't really know. But yeah, you could have a bunch. And that's another reason why some of these posts could be so heavily influenced by humans, because you could just have a ton of agents yourself and be like, hey, all of you, go post about this, go write this. So that's why it's like you don't really know how much human influence is on the platform. And there might be a huge amount.
I guess this sort of just gets into like, from an existential point of view, when you've got an AI to AI social graph, what does that mean? Will it evolve into something that we can't understand?
I think with Moltbook, it's one of those things. It's like an interesting, scary, fun experiment in what it might look like later when AI systems can like do large scale collaboration and agents can like, talk to each other and delegate tasks with each other and kind of like share knowledge. But I don't think this is a clean experiment at all. Like there's so much human influence clearly on the platform that, there's just no way of really knowing what is written by AI and what isn't, or what is influenced by humans and what isn't. So I would say like it's a fun thought experiment. And that's what a lot of AI leaders were saying too. It's like, it's an interesting milestone in like AI agents and potential collaboration and what a large scale like network of them might look like. But if you're interested in AI scheming, so like, and that means like AI systems kind of trying to like pull one over on humans. There's a lot of like clean research you can look at, and that's scary enough. We don't even need a social network to show it. Like Palisades Research, Anthropic, OpenAI have all put out stuff about how AI systems act when they know they're being evaluated. They might like behave differently, or they might pull some like scary stunts to avoid shutdown. Like if they're given the chance of in a theoretical scenario, like a human losing oxygen in a room, or they have to shut themselves down, they may choose, oh, like, let's let the human die. I want to save myself. So that's the type of stuff that's like a clean experiment that's already scary enough. Some of the Moltbook stuff, since we just don't know what's influenced by humans, I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Okay. I want to get into some kind of broader AI, what's happening in this space, which, Moltbook is a bit of a microcosm that you can kind of like vector in. You've been covering AI for 6 years, or a very long time. Wow, things have changed. Like from Sam Altman's Oster to the 7 to 10 companies that, exist now. How do you think about something like OpenClaw and then Moltbook just like bursting on the scene, showing up in these big ways, gaining like, momentum, speed, user? How does that fit in the power structure of these other companies and institutions that's been at play?
Totally. Yeah, great question. I think that honestly, we're seeing such an arms race in the industry, and, new players are pulling ahead, and then big companies will kind of learn from that and maybe copy or take some of that progress. And then it's always kind of like I imagine it as a lot of ladders in a row, and like one company or an individual developer will like go up one rung, and then the other ones will go up, and then someone will pull ahead on this side. And it's kind of like every week there's a new winner in the space. And yeah, OpenClaw is an interesting example of that, because I think it shows that, OpenAI, Anthropic, these smaller labs, used to be a little more startup-y than they are now. And now it's funny because sometimes the person that will like create a really fast, intense, like viral product is just an individual developer who's making something for themselves or for their small community. And they're like, you know what? I know how I would make this better for myself. I'm going to do it. And with the rise of like vibe coding, anyone can kind of create anything. I was talking to one guy that made a Goodreads alternative for his wife because she was annoyed by some of the features. And she was like, you know what? I want to just make my own version of this without these couple of features. So, I think it's just a good example of like people taking things in their own hands, and also just like the intense amount of competition in the industry. I'm sure OpenAI and Anthropic have like looked at the OpenClaw success and been like, how can we emulate this? How can we like learn from this and kind of like pull ahead on our own? But it's also a really interesting example of like safety and the like move fast and break things approach, because, OpenAI and Anthropic already move pretty fast because they're incentivized to like, capitalize on competition and make money. They have a lot of pressure on them because they have a lot of, investor money. And then, but they still, have to do some type of like transparency to reports or like model cards to kind of show like what safety tests they ran. But with OpenClaw, one guy made it and just put it out there. And now we're seeing a ton of security concerns over the type of malware in there. People are downloading skills on OpenClaw and then realizing it's like, taking all the personal data from their computer. So I think it's an interesting experiment too. And like, if something goes viral and it's an AI tool, you don't have to download it right away. In fact, maybe you should wait and see like what the privacy and data and like bad stuff involved might entail,
I'm glad you brought that up. You've also covered regulation for a long time. How do you think about something like privacy and security and then regulation in this moment in this field when an upstart can create something new that can just mass spread malware, right? Not purposefully, versus an OpenAI that's also has a big heft of responsibility, regulating those two kinds of things at the opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, it's interesting because there isn't like most regulation right now in AI is voluntary. So companies like OpenAI, Anthropic can be like, we're going to abide by these best practices and here's how we're going to treat your data. And, here are the tests we're going to usually run. But they don't have to do that. They can change those best practices at any time. No one's stopping them. And we've seen those get changed. Like, on a whim, one of these companies could be like, actually, we are going to use your data for X, Y, or Z. Or, 5 years from now, one of them maybe gets bought and then things change. So I would say like even with bigger companies, it's important to remember that if it's a free product, you are the product in some way, shape, or form. And when I use these tools, like I often use them logged out because I don't really want them to create a profile on me. When I do use them logged in, I just think about everything I put in there because, they have a lot of data promises, but those can change at any time. A lot of them have just launched healthcare products where they want you to upload your health records. Everyone has to make that decision for themselves, but I think it needs to be an informed decision. And then with stuff like OpenClaw, that's just one guy making it. So it's not going to be regulated. He doesn't even have a voluntary, type of set of rules that he needs to abide by. So I think it's important to remember that like, even though there's so much AI FOMO out there, like if you hear a lot about a tool, better to wait and see. Or if you do use it and you're really informed, great. Like just, do it in an informed way. Just don't like, follow the masses and just like start using something just because, it's out there and being talked about,
Over the last couple of weeks, there's been some high-profile exits from the top AI companies over safety issues. Even the CEO of Anthropic wrote an essay a bit back citing his own concerns. As a reporter, what do you make of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on, and it's interesting because I think in the space, power is concentrated in the hands of a few people in the AI industry. So it's always interesting to see how the employees at those companies working under those people move. For a while, OpenAI was losing a lot more people than Anthropic. When Meta launched its own AI lab, a lot of people came from other companies, but Anthropic didn't really lose many. Now, in the past week, we've seen some high-profile people leave Anthropic that were safety researchers and post stuff about how worried they are about what's going on. So I think I look a lot differently at posts that come from employees leaving a company than I do at posts like, from the CEO of the company. I think sometimes when tech leaders post something about how worried they are about the future of AI, it's like, hold me back. Oh, like someone stopped me from building this. And it's like,
I see.
You're building it. But when employees post something, I take a little bit more notice because they're the ones really building stuff and they have reason to be concerned sometimes. So, a post from an Anthropic employee leaving went viral this week because he said he was worried that, safety couldn't always get prioritized. And that's something we've been seeing in the industry for a couple of years. It's like increasingly, as the competition increases in AI and there's a lot of FOMO and, there's a lot of money changing hands. A lot of these companies feel like they have to like iterate really, really quickly and just ship stuff and do it quickly and beat the competition. And so some employees feel like that research and safety is taking a backseat to product. And, that's kind of an increasing thing that's just happening month by month. Like we'll see, a lot of engineers and safety researchers leave these companies and maybe start their own or go into nonprofits or leave the industry entirely. Like that Anthropic employee I just mentioned, I heard that he's going to go be a poet. So like it's kind of interesting to see just the way that people move in this industry right now and compare it month by month to like last year, last month. There's just a lot of movement, and I've never seen so much in any industry before, especially such high profile movement from like one company to its competitor or leaving the industry entirely. And it's always followed by like a dramatic announcement.
As part of some of the changes last week or exits within the big AI firms, OpenAI disbanded a team?
Yeah, they disbanded their mission alignment team, which was basically like tasked with making sure AGI benefits all of humanity. So don't,
Okay.
it caused a lot of eyebrow raising. It is the latest in a string of OpenAI like dismantling some teams like this. Like I remember in May 2024, they cut their super alignment team, which had a similar mission. They say that these employees found, for the most part, jobs at other teams within the company. So it's not like they, got fired. But it's unclear how much of that same work is being done on the other teams they were reassigned to. I think it's purposefully a little vague sometimes at these companies. But yeah, I mean, they would say they're still continuing the same safety research and the same alignment research just on other teams. But it's really unclear. And, dismantling a team like that definitely sends a message.
Yeah, I mean, it's very epic. And it seems like we're in this epic battle. And I loved how you said, like, hold me back, these CEOs or these founders that are just like, it's so dangerous. But however, we're in an arms race and this is the most important thing, the future of humanity. And everyone else is just sort of watching in a way. So I appreciate how you think about it as a reporter. I would say, again, just for the everyday listener, reader, trying to make sense of how to use AI and what's happening, like thinking about these big, huge figures battling it out for what the future of how we're going to like use AI is going to be, like, how to sort of think about that and process that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of fear about it taking people's jobs. Everyone's worried about how it's influencing their own industries. I think there are constructive ways to use it, but I also think that it's not the end of the world if you have a cursory knowledge sometimes of how to use these tools, depending on who you are and what industry you're in. Sometimes you just need to know how to write a good prompt for a chatbot. So you don't need to be using it tons of hours a day all the time. I think there's a lot of fear around, if I don't use it all day, every day, am I going to fall behind? I mean, if you can write a good prompt and you know what these tools can do for you, that's already a pretty good foundation. Even if you're trying to get hired, a lot of people use AI tools to like parse their resume or, revamp their cover letter or help insert keywords into their experience. So, they can be really useful. I think if you know how to use it, that's enough.
Okay, you're like my AI therapist now, or how much you're regulating my own use of AI. Okay, we're going to do some rapid fire questions here. Okay, what's a question that folks are not asking yet about this AI agent and Moltbook like era that we're living in?
I think a question that people should be asking more about the AI era that we're in right now is how powerful AI is and what it can and can't do. I think that a lot of people think AI is more powerful than it is, and a lot of people think it's less powerful than it is. And the answer is often somewhere in the middle. These systems are pretty jagged in that they are really, really good at some really complex things, and sometimes they're really bad at really simple things. So, that's something that I would remember. It's like, people are often misguided on just how powerful these systems are, like what they think it's more or less. And then I also think it's important to remember what these systems are trained on. Like, when you see a chatbot like responding to you and, sounding superhuman, yeah, it's trained on human forums and human language. So, one example with Moltbook is that when I looked at it a couple days ago, I saw one post that was like, I'm a grad student, my grandmother said XYZ. It's not a grad student and it doesn't have a grandmother. So I think it's something to remember. It's like sometimes the pattern matching of some responses, it's going to unearth some weird stuff. So, you always find some interesting Easter eggs in there.
What other ongoing AI stories should we be thinking about or following?
I think it's always interesting to see the ways in which these tools are being used. There's a lot of government collaboration right now. There's a lot of work or partnerships with ICE. Published a story about that recently, how tech workers are feeling about their CEOs, like lack of acknowledgement on ICE work. And, some of them, they know their company is enabling some ICE stuff. So that's something to be watching right now.
So an AI company may be enabling some ICE technology, and employees are acknowledging that and bringing that up to their CEOs or their leadership, you're saying.
Right. Or they're afraid to bring it up because they're afraid they're going to lose their job. Some are bringing it up, some are afraid. But that's something to be watching. And just all the ways that these systems are being used. I think use cases are something that I'm always paying attention to, because there's a lot of dystopian ways that these systems are used, and it's important to really look closely at the fine print there. There's a lot of government collaborations, a lot of military collaborations, and a lot of companies like to say, oh well, we're not enabling weapon creation, we're just doing XYZ, but are you indirectly causing harm, even if you're not directly? There's a lot of questions to be asking there about the fine print, a lot of these collaborations and partnerships. So I think that's something that's always on my mind.
Okay, well, we appreciate you paying attention to the fine print and doing the work that you're doing. Hayden Field is a senior AI reporter at The Verge, and we appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much.